Season's greetings, fellow mortals, immortals, and everyone in between and far beyond. I'm Rubber, and today I'd like to tell you about three siblings, the ones that created the world of Naleal and its 7 layers. Their names are Naleal, the Laughing One, and the Almighty. They were all that was the universe. They were everything and yet nothing. That was when someone told a joke. A simple one, yet still it was funny. What the joke actually was is unknown. Some say it was a jest that insulted the Almighty. But the consequences were creation. Land and sea was laughed to be the world, if you could have called it that, where logic had little legitimate power, was now fading, and material came from the immaterial. These events were shocking to the Almighty and Naleal, but amused their sister even more, which resulted in more being created. After a while, the joke got old. Now, there was something that they had never seen or thought possible, and the three of them had no fucking clue what to do. So they did the only thing that would get them answers. They explored. The land had ditches and hills, mountains and snow. They walked across flat sand and dove underwater. When moving by some monstrous mountains, the Almighty saw a face in the rocks, but the three of them were the only creatures in existence. He changed that. To the surprise of his siblings, he began to sing. The song brought life to clay, and the first humans began to hum the same tune as their creator. But humming can only go on for so long, until hunger sets in. Hunger was a new concept to the three siblings. They never felt their stomachs growl and churn for food. Many humans died before new creatures were made, and plants to feed both human and animal. All the humans hailed their almighty savior, and he accepted his position as life's overlord. These humans became the first civilization. People were happy. They could call any animal and it would be happily eaten, and they lived in the area called the Cradle of the Almighty. With nothing really better to do, Naleal and the Laughing One wandered the world that now had new wonder. The Laughing One drifted, and they became fascinated with the dancers, chefs, singers, musicians, comedians, entertainers of all sorts. But whenever she laughed, strange situations strung to be. Rocks would form, wood turn to pearls, and other weird and obscene happenings. Naleal was intrigued, but the Almighty was slightly annoyed by his sister. However, as long as she didn't disrupt his creations too greatly, he was happy ruling. Naleal observed and learned more about the Laughing One's powers. They saw, through laughter, that she could create and alter the world around her. Naleal had tried to create material, but failed. All that they could do was move and change, not make. The Almighty was the same. All he had done was change the stone so much that it became living, and most humans couldn't even slightly bend reality, let alone dream of creating a new one. But humans are strange creatures. A few had noted the fact that Naleal fucking flied everywhere, and studied their multitude of methods of movement. These ones copied Naleal and learned how to touch the clouds. But the ether, oh, the mystical ether that allowed magic to be casted, was a scarce commodity for these clever humans. Some of these spellcasters were worshipped, and the ones with large following became even more powerful. And some crafty ones found other sources for ether, but I can't give you all the answers, always, and hell, I'll even contradict myself, so you can decide what is true. But continuing, this didn't sit well with the all-powerful creator and overlord of life, the Almighty, since he wanted humans to worship him and him alone. But he was curious of these new gods, so he began to listen to rumors about these self-proclaimed gods. They were still human, and he despised killing his favorite creations, but he was curious. A little different to their brother, Naleal became curious by the determination and intellect of all humans. Before they thought humans were weird moving rocks. Now they thought that humans were weird, clever, curious, and cunning moving rocks. Many humans employed the same techniques that Naleal used. Others achieved the same results, but with different methods, so Naleal gave the world much more magic. Throughout the 7 layers, ether flowed like waves, and creatures and plants began to change. Some animals became more aggressive and attacked humans. Some plants could poison people, and more people could use the gas-like ether to do feats people didn't fathom before the flood. With the reports of new magic, the Almighty applauded, but with reports of death, he raged. The Laughing One had made the world, the Almighty had made its inhabitants, and Naleal, they were now causing death to many, but Minotaur had a plan to avoid their brother's wrath. They had noted a great curiosity. The Laughing One had been taken along with many circuses and traveling performers. This was not new news to the Almighty, but Minotaur reminded their brother that whenever she laughed, new sea and land was made. This too wasn't new news, but the Almighty hadn't heard about the Gorgons. The Gorgons were humans who had been corrupted by the reality-bending laughter that was the Laughing One's giggles. These Gorgons were short, with often green skin and long arms, a scrawny build, and also had a crackpot genius. This was an immense insult to the Almighty. He had made all the creatures and critters to allow humans to live without stress, and now animals were killing his favorite creations, and the Laughing One was corrupting them. Action had to be taken, and violent action seemed to be the plan. The Almighty called his people to rally, and a great horde soon began to follow him. They began to hunt the Gorgons and all the other corrupted creatures, but the people were armed with knives and their magic was weak. Plus, no one knew how to track anything. The Gorgons who wanted to survive soon learned how to hide, and the great hunt failed. More reports came to the Almighty about humans who had been changed. The Gorgons were only the first, but it seemed that the Laughing One was purposely changing creatures and even combining them. Some of these were mindless abominations, and others were just as intelligent as humans. Furthermore insulted, the Almighty asked Minotaur for help. Together, they made 4 new creatures. These ones were made for fighting, hunting, and using magic. Additionally, these 4 could create their own weaker kin, and even adjust the creation process to suit their needs, and thus, the Demon Lords were made. With these 4, the 2 siblings might be able to stop the Laughing One. One ordinary day, the Almighty invited the Laughing One to dinner to try and fix their relationship, but alas, it was a trap. Minotaur was hiding as the 2 talked, and upon a signal, the 4 Demon Lords restrained the Laughing One, while the lesser demons killed anyone who followed her. Minotaur began to cast a spell which would have banished the Laughing One from the world if she had shut the fuck up. She lived as she was banished, which in summary was laughing. She bent the reality-bending magic to banish the Almighty, and to piss off the Almighty even more, the 2 of them would be together in banishment. Her last words in the material were, "Fuck you," before the 2 were trapped. The 2 of them are now gone, never seen again, although attempts of returning the Almighty have occurred. These have failed, often thwarted by the Demon Lords. However, both creators still have influence over the world. The Almighty has because many still worship him as a god, and the Laughing One's laugh still echoes and shall forever change the world. Minotaur has traveled the world recording everything they see. This ends this part of the tale. I do plan on doing a second part, just with new art, and remember that perspective is subjective.